Hi everyone, my name is Pancho. I'm the CEO of Frontier Performance. Today I want to talk about mixed signals. I've written a lot of posts around this area, around communication. So I'm going to make things a little bit easier for you to understand. When we communicate to people, there are three aspects of communication that you need to be aware of. There are what we call facts, there are what we call feelings, and there are what we call perceptions. In this environment, especially since it's becoming a little bit more challenging, we actually have to be very, very mindful of what the client is actually saying to us. We have to listen very attentively to understand the difference between when they are talking about facts, when they're talking about feelings, and when they're talking about perceptions. Now, the thing that you need to be aware of is that facts get clouded by feelings. So we can think about a fact, but if our feelings get involved in it, then we actually interpret those facts differently based upon how we are actually, what our situation is when we're going to make a decision. So salespeople have always asked me, what is a perception? And I'm going to give you an example which will help you to get a bit more clarity in your own mind. If we look at the current economic climate, we have one salesperson on one side who sees it all too difficult, and he can't make ends meet, and he's really struggling with his own attitudes and behaviors. Then we have another salesperson who sees this environment as an opportunity to grow. He thinks, a lot of salespeople are going to be negative, they're going to be leaving the industry, it's a great time to build market share. So we have the same environment, yet we have a different perception of the environment. And where do those perceptions come from? What we think. So our thoughts are creating our perceptions. Now, if you're on the other side and you're actually talking to a salesperson, if you're talking to another person that you're selling to, what is it that you actually need to be aware of? When you're listening to their dialogue, you actually have to be very, very mindful of what are they saying that's a fact? What are they saying that's purely just around feelings? And what do they perceive around the market in itself? So for example, if buyers, if we're talking about real estate, if we're talking about buyers who are hesitant about committing to actually making a bid for the property, we actually have to understand, is it because they perceive the market is low, or do they perceive it's better to actually wait? Now, you have to think very, very logically about this when you listen to what's actually coming out of the mouth of the client, because their perceptions are driving all their decision-making strategies. So if you are to change a person's mind about making a bid for the property, making a bid for the car, or whatever you're selling, you actually have to have some dialogue where you understand their intent about what they're saying. That means, what is it that they're actually after? So you need to be able to pull apart a fact. So a fact will be independent of anyone's opinions. A fact stands as a fact from far away. It's numbers, it's very numeric. So if you are looking to get a client to perceive the market differently, if you're wanting a client to actually make a bid for the property, you have to actually provide a bit more facts into your argument or the way you're negotiating. And then it's very, very mindful that you actually have to generate some emotion in the client, generate some feelings, so that the feelings will impact on how they think about the facts, but also how they think about the perceptions. So in one way, you actually have to be quite adaptable when you're listening to the client, and to listen a lot more than actually talk a lot more. And you actually have to have flexibility in your dialogue. So one type of answer is not going to cut it. Especially if you have a husband and wife, you actually need to be able to relate to both, because I can tell you one thing, both of them will have different perceptions about the property or the car or whatever you're selling. Both of them will have different feelings about making a bid for the property. So this is where it becomes really, really challenging for you, because we all know as salespeople that we can relate to one person and struggle with the other, because we're not dealing with their perceptions, we're not dealing with their feelings, and we're not dealing with the way they're interpreting the facts. So what that really requires you is to have adaptability in your approach, and to be able to pull apart in their communication, what's the facts they're talking about, what are the feelings they're talking about, and how are they actually perceiving the market. So this is a greater, I suppose, challenge that we have, because now we're going into questioning, dialogue, and negotiation strategies, which I'll be talking about in the posts coming up in the foreseeable future. So if you want to find out some more information about perhaps this area, which is quite an interesting area about human psychology around decision making, get a hold of us through our website, or send me an email on info@frontierp.com.au. See you soon.